Hello everyone, officially, and welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday afternoon to join us. This is the monthly McLean County Reentry Council meeting. My name is Colleen Shaw, and I am on the MCRC board. If this is your first time joining us, the McLean County Reentry Council is a coordinated community response that aims to address reentry efforts and reduce recidivism in our community. And one of the ways that we do that is by gathering together for a monthly meeting where we hear from local organizations, agencies, and individuals to learn and be educated on the great work everyone is doing to help accomplish these goals of reentry efforts in our community. So we are going to start off with introductions, and then I'm going to introduce our guest speaker for today, McLean County Reentry Board Member Langston Pates, that we have the privilege of hearing from. And lastly, we're going to finish by opening the floor to anyone that would like to share an update or an upcoming event from their agency. So if that all sounds great, let's go ahead and get started with introductions. So if you just want to give your name, the agency or organization that you represent, that would be great. So I'll start. My name is Colleen Shaw, and I work at Bloomington Public Library, and I am the outreach manager there, and I'm also on the MCRC board. And I'll turn it over to Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris. I teach at Illinois Wesleyan in the School of Theater, where I teach a variety of classes, including ones about community engagement and social change.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Marla?
Hi, I'm Marla Elmer. I work with the Department of Corrections. I'm a corrections assessment specialist. I work out of the Champaign office, so I don't cover McLean County, but we're neighbors, so I hop on to see what I can mooch.
I love it. Thanks for joining us, Marla. Sherry?
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Sherry Thompson. I'm the Corrections Assessment Specialist with Peoria Parole. And just like Marla, I'm from like Peoria Parole, but I jumped on to see what I can learn. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, thanks for being here. All right, Millicent?
I am also a parole reentry corrections specialist, corrections specialist, assessment. This job title has too many syllables. You know that? It's all over. Apologies. Parole reentry corrections assessment specialist. Okay, wow. Got it.
That's quite a title.
And I work out of Springfield, so like Marla and Sherry, I am mooching, but I'm very interested to seeing everything that you have, because I have so many people in my area who are in very small towns. I think the smallest town might be 17 people, and they need to drive elsewhere. I mean, some people can get their resources in the county where they live, but a lot of them can't. So it is a little bit of mooching, but it's also because mooching, but a lot of it's, to see if there's an additional place that we can refer, because we really do want to help the people that we're working with.
Yes. Great. Thank you for being here. Jessica?
So Jessica Mayhew, I'm the Southern Region Reentry Manager for Department of Corrections. So I work directly with Marla, Sherry, and Millicent. So it's kind of funny that four of us went in unison, or whatever you would say, progression with each other. And so yeah, same thing, just kind of trying to learn. And I cover everything from Peoria south. So McLean County is part of that area that I cover. So appreciate all the extra information.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Miss Robinson, Trudy?
Hi, my name is Trudy Robinson. I'm from the YW Strive program here in Bloomington, and we help disadvantaged people with barriers to employment to learn essential skills, and we serve the McLean County area. But yeah, Trudy Robinson from YW Strive. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And Tommy?
Hey everybody, I'm actually on the road. I'm not driving right now, but I parked. I'm Tommy Johnson. I work at Heartland Community College. I work for a program called Workforce Equity Initiative. It's a program that helps out individuals from underrepresented populations get short-term certificates in high demand, high paying fields such as welding and truck driving. So we support the Heartland Community College District. We actually have WEI throughout the state through 18 community colleges where we help individuals that are from underrepresented populations such as minorities and also formerly incarcerated individuals. So we want to help out the community any way we can, especially somebody that is just as impacted and is just getting back out into that world to become a citizen and be productive. And so we want to be able to help those individuals. So that is what I do. It's a passion. I love it. And I'm grateful to be a part, to work with a group of individuals like ourselves.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. It's important work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm really excited to introduce Langston to you all before he gets started. Langston gave a similar he had a similar speaking event if you were at the Behavioral Health Summit in town in October. And so we're excited to have the opportunity to actually record this. Just as a reminder, we do have a YouTube channel. So if you have clients or people at other organizations or agencies that could benefit from Langston's talk, it's very powerful. We're going to be posting the link to this recording on our YouTube page. You can follow us on Facebook, McLean County Reentry Council, and we will share the link to that YouTube posting so that we can send it far and wide. So Langston, just in the way of introductions, he has served time in numerous county jails, state and federal penitentiaries. Langston has also battled with substance abuse the majority of his adult life. And those trials led to having his children taken away from him by social services. But with faith and perseverance and a complete change in mindset, Langston was able to overcome and gain everything back that he ever lost and then some. So he is now a business owner. He is an entrepreneur and a real estate investor. But most importantly, he's a father. So today, Langston's going to share what his journey has looked like and the many barriers that he's had to overcome and he has overcome along the way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Langston.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for that great introduction. Can you guys all see me and hear me? We good? Thanks for that great introduction, Colleen. I want to thank everybody, that's here for being here today. 2023 has been a great year. It's been an amazing year, not only, for myself, my family, my business, but the Reentry Council, the community, legislation. It's just, this year has just been a tremendous blessing. And I believe it's because I surrounded myself with around people that had purpose. And I've surrounded myself around people that take action. Many of the people that are here on this call and watching, from home. They say action is the difference between what we imagine in our minds and what we, manifest into our reality. We can't change our past, but we can implement, new positive behaviors in our present, right, to lead us to the future life that we want. I have been to 8 county jails. I have, served time in 2 state prisons here in the state of Illinois. I have been to 3 United States penitentiaries. I was indicted by the United States government for manufacturing and delivery, and I was flown on Con Air to a federal prison in Arkansas. I also served time in a United States penitentiary in downtown Chicago. I did develop substance abuse issues along the way. My actions did result in my children being taken away from me by the Department of Children and Family Services. But I have to go back even further, you guys. I have to remind myself that I did grow up, in a single parent environment with my father serving a 40-year to life sentence in a maximum security prison. I did, grow up in a very impoverished environment. My mother was a single mother raising two kids with her husband gone possibly for life. I did wear my sister's clothes. I did have to go to school with shoes on my feet that were too small, or used, that came from a thrift store, and I got made fun of. Kids didn't treat me too well, knowing that my father was in prison for murder, and I'm wearing secondhand clothes, and those things were very traumatic for me. Our family uprooted and left the town that I was born in, and we came here to Bloomington, Illinois. Trauma is real. We all experience trauma. Trauma looks different for everybody. My rock bottom might be a little different than Colleen's rock bottom, might be a little higher than Christopher's rock bottom, but we all have experienced some type of trauma before in our life. And oftentimes trauma can go untreated for a long time. There's many different reasons why trauma goes untreated. But we have come to find out that untreated trauma can be a direct connection to, things like incarceration, things like substance abuse issues and mental health and anxiety and depression. And trauma can go untreated for a long time because we're not really ready to deal with it. And I remember finding myself in segregation. I was in a United States penitentiary. I had gotten myself in trouble in prison. So now I'm in prison. I've lost my identity. I've lost my freedom. I've lost all my worldly possessions, and I'd even lost my children. And I was at an all-time low. If ever I felt like there was a hell on earth, I felt like I was in it. And it was at that moment that I realized that I had time to reflect, obviously. And in reflecting, I realized that I had become the exact person that I despised when I was a child, my father, in prison while we were out here growing up. And I was now that dad, incarcerated with my children at home, growing up without me. And so I decided that, it was time for me to face all of those traumatic experiences from my past that I had been running from for so long, masking pain and frustration with substance abuse. Dirty drops are a really quick way to get you sent back to prison when you're on parole, and you're home and you're back in the world and you're using illegal substances. It's a really fast way to find yourself back in prison. And that's what I was doing. I was on my way home, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea how I was going to go out into the world and add value to this world in the condition that I was in. And so I had to really start, facing a lot of those fears. And so today with the people on this call, we're talking about resources, and mindset is one of the biggest resources we have. Our mindset is the biggest asset that we can ever have. We can own cars, we can own houses, our bank accounts can have lots of zeros in them, but without the right mindset, none of that means anything. And so there are some people maybe even on this call that have, are never been incarcerated themselves, but we've all felt some sense of lack of self-worth, some sense of isolation. Being in segregation in prison, it's very similar to being in a bathroom. Shut the lights off. There's no television. There's no phone. There's not all this cool stuff that they talk about people have in prison, tablets and the ability to communicate. I was in jail. I had no phone. I had no TV. I didn't get to make phone calls but once every 30 days. And they would give you one attempt to call someone. And if they didn't answer, they would pull that phone back out of the chuck hole, and you got to try again 30 days from that. So you always I made sure to call someone that I knew was going to pick that phone up. You didn't want to call someone that wasn't going to answer. My mother happened to be that person. And while I was in segregation, my mother had a heart attack, and I had no idea what was going on with her. I would sit there and I would watch under the door for a letter, for any type of news to tell me what was going on with her, whether she had lived, whether her surgery was successful or not. It was very, very fearful. And I found myself, I'd read everything on the book cart. I had exhausted everything that I had to, stimulate my mind. And it was at that time a Bible came under the door. And, I tried not to, get religion and stuff too involved with the Reentry Council, but my journey was very spiritual. And I believe, as I now sit on the other side looking back, it is my duty to say that, to say, he is the way that I got to where I am. It was in that Bible that I found great stories of men like Joseph and other characters in the Bible. I read that thing from front to back, probably 3 times, to make sure I didn't miss anything. And it was there that I heard, stories like Joseph, and people who went from being, a slave and a prisoner to owning land and being a king and living out, a great life. And I knew that I wanted to go back into the world and I wanted to add value with my gift. I had to figure out what that was. Many of us are walking around day to day, and we're at jobs that we don't want to be at. We're doing everything that everybody else wants us to do. We're collecting a paycheck, and it might be a healthy one, but we're not fulfilling our purpose. We're not living out our gifts in this world, the thing that we do the absolute best with the least amount of effort. My paperwork all along, my criminal past has been manufacturing with the intent to deliver. The state of Illinois said it, the United States government said it, the prosecutor said it, the judge said it. And I started to realize that there were gifts in that. I manufactured and I delivered marijuana all across the United States, from California to Illinois, and I excelled at it. Growing up, without a positive male role model, I latched on to the first thing that was presented to me. And that's a huge factor for young men and women who are growing up, without positive male role models, is one will step into that position. There are people and organizations. That's why young men and women join gangs, is they're looking for leadership. They're looking for discipline. They're looking for direction. And there is someone out there that will prey upon those young people, and they will find direction for them. They will introduce them to something that, might not be the best way for them to go. For me, that was marijuana. For me, my quest for financial freedom, my quest to, break generational poverty, it brought me a great life. It brought me lots of friends. So I thought, until I landed myself in a United States penitentiary. When I had to deal with the fact that my children had been taken away from me, I had to really dive deep and understand in my own mind that I really had never been a good father, because I didn't know what one looked like. I knew how to go out into the world and get money, and I thought that made me a good dad. I wasn't getting the money the right way, but my kids weren't going without the things that I went without. And I thought that that's what made me a provider. But here I am now. I can't provide. I can't get them money. I can't love on them or hug them or teach them, how to treat people and how to act in this world from where I am now. And so, I not only was I not adding value to begin with the money, now I can't even do that. Trauma, when goes untreated, there's usually reasons you know, there's what I call three different phases to trauma. There is the event, there is the experience, and then there's the effect. So for instance, you know, the event for me was my father being taken away from me and being placed in a maximum security prison. The experience was growing up in a single parent environment. I'm now a Black man in America being raised by a white woman. That's a tremendous barrier to overcome. She tried to teach me how to navigate in this world, but this world does not look at us the same. And on top of that, you know, she could barely make ends meet. The effect was, you know, me being willing to take risks, to take unnecessary risks, to break the law, to bend corners, to cheat, to try to get myself, my sister, my mother, and my children and everybody around me out of this generational poverty. It's like diabetes, it's hereditary. We just keep passing it on to our children. I believe that some of my substance abuse and some of my addictions really started when I had to face the fact that my untreated trauma was cycling, because my children were now reaching the age that I was, you know, when my father went to prison, when, you know, when all of the things that I had to teach myself how to do, I didn't know how to teach someone else how to throw a punch, how to throw a baseball, how to ride a bicycle, how to shave their face. Like, I had to teach myself that, and my mother did the best, you know, that she could. I had uncles and I had other male role models in my life that came and went, and that taught me things as well. But it's different. It's different than having your father there. You know, you can have your mother and your sister and an uncle and a cousin at your football game, but when you see those other young men there with their dads on the sidelines, just so proud, it hits a little different. So, you know, the one thing that I recognize is that untreated trauma, once I was willing to deal with that, you guys, I was really able to open a whole nother like lane in my life. Things in my life, once I was able to say, you know what, this is who I am. These are the things that I've been through. I can't change that. All I can do is move forward. And I looked across the board at a lot of the characteristics that I had that I put towards the negative things that I was doing in selling marijuana. It was, you know, sales, it was growth, it was leadership. You know, I was providing a service and a product. I was delivering that service and that product, and I was enrolling other people to help me with 1 and 2. And that's when I realized, like, I'm either ready to go back to federal prison, or I'm ready to go out into this world and become a business owner or an entrepreneur. And so I did just that. I paroled home in 2019, in April of 2019. And I did live in my mother's basement. Many of you have heard me say, you know, shout out to my mother. She allowed me to parole home to her house. I had a horrible credit score. Everything I had loan wise, out with banks, that all defaulted when I went to prison. I got a job for $13 an hour. I did not have a car. I was blessed to get a job for $13 an hour, but it was $13 an hour, and I knew I couldn't do much with that. I took the job and I got to work, and I started trying to add as much value as I could to that job. My parole officer actually told me at first that I couldn't take that job. I had been offered this job while I was in prison before I came home, 3 weeks before I got to the door. My parole officer, or my boss actually sent me a letter, and he told me that he knew I still had a driver's license and that he would like to hire me. And so I accepted the job, and I had a letter, and I presented it to my parole officer when he came to see me. And I was supposed to start on Tuesday. And he told me that I couldn't take that job, that was a delivery driver job. And because I had an ankle monitor on my leg, that I couldn't move around in the community with this job, I had to be somewhere stationary. And I could come and go. And sorry, I didn't do this to you. The judge did. And I remember thinking in my mind, if for ever there was a time to break a rule, it was now. I have a job. I start on Tuesday. All the guys that you have to track down and hit over the head and drag into work and, hope that they go in there and they're productive today. And then every day do that. I have a job. I want to go there. I want to be out in the world making money. And he wouldn't let me. And so I had to call the man and thank him and tell him, I can't accept this job. And he actually stopped me and he said, Langston, he goes, it's going to take me longer than 60 days to find someone that can do this job the way I know you can do it. And so I'm going to change your job description. We're going to call it warehouse production management. And we're going to put you in the warehouse for 60 days. And when that 60 days is up, they cut that thing off. We'll put you in your truck and away you go. And that's what happened. And I thanked the man above, and I got to work like a man on fire. And I tried to add as much value to that place as I could. For $13 an hour, I was doing enough work for 2 or 3 people. I was so happy to be home and to be free, to be living in my mother's basement. There was good food cooked every evening, and just all of the things that I was missing from the world. Money was no longer something that I chased. It was great to earn a paycheck, but I enjoyed all of just the worldly experience again, that I just saved it. I put it in a bank account. My check was direct deposited to my bank account every Friday. And in fact, I started to do other work, side work. I'd work 40 hours a week, and then I would go do side jobs, doing single furniture deliveries to add even more income. And I started to be able to live off of the work that I was making on the side. I went 12 months without having to touch my paycheck, working 40 hours a week. The internet taught me about my credit score. Those are things that weren't talked about in my household. Again, trauma can veer its way into your life in many different hidden ways. The lack of knowledge is also traumatic. Credit score and, things, debt and taxes and all of those things that poor and middle class, hardworking poor middle class people are afraid of. It's the same things that other people are using to build wealth, to build generational wealth, if used the right way. And so I continued along that journey. I wanted to become a homeowner. I actually tried to rent a house. I believe many of you have heard me tell the story of trying to rent a house. I was denied by a property management company because of my background. Again, barrier. Just because I had made this great decision that I was going to come home with this new mindset, I thought the world was just going to accept this. I thought the world was going to fall in line with me and say, oh, he's ready. But I had proven time and time again that I wasn't. And so, the parole officer, the property management company, the mental health people that told me they didn't have the finances for my mental health evaluation, those were all, barriers that were still put in place that I had to overcome along this journey. Once I had made this change in mindset, but I didn't give up. At any point in time, if I had given up, I would have been standing back in front of a judge, right, with dirty drops, telling him that they didn't have, the money for my mental health evaluation. So I'm just back self-medicating. I would have told him, I had a job, but my parole officer told me I couldn't keep it. I would have had all these things, and I'd have blamed everybody else for why I was back in front of the judge. Instead, I kept moving forward. And every time I came across a barrier, I just became a problem solver. And just when things looked like they were starting to turn around in my life, my job was doing great. My side work was doing great. I had saved up a bunch of money. The world was introduced to COVID-19. And so everything was shut down. The entire world was shut down. I mean, you guys were all there. We know everything was over the computer and jobs were non-essential. The party rental business was definitely non-essential. And that was the job that I had. So we all got laid off. And my phone started to ring, though, more and more for my side job, moving single pieces of furniture. And what ended up happening, guys, is I was able to transition from being an employee to being a business owner. I started networking. I met realtors and I met lenders. And there were times where I was in some rooms with these people and I still had an ankle monitor on my leg and no one knew it. And I still had a lack of self-worth. I still remembering thinking in my mind, what if they knew I was on parole? What if they knew I had an ankle monitor on my leg? What if they knew I couldn't leave the house except to go to work? What would they think about me? But I also knew that I was very good at what I did, and I believed in myself. I had perseverance, I had faith, and I believed in God. And those people, come to find out, they did need my services. When they lend somebody money for a house and then they go to the realtor and they choose it, the next person they have to go see is a furniture mover. And so when I go in someone's house today and I pad wrap and I shrink wrap and I box up their furniture and I prepare it to go on the truck, that's the definition of manufacturing and delivery. It's the preparation of goods by hand, and upon completion, they can be then delivered to a customer. That intent to deliver was still there. And I realized that, like Joseph, I can add value to the world with my gift. I can travel with people to their new home every day. What a glorious job. Every day it's like being at a wedding. And some days it's not. Some days people have lost everything. And I've met great people with the McLean County Reentry Council, like Prairie State Legal. And, they reached out to me and they said, we've got a lady being evicted and she's got to get all her stuff and she's got to get out and we need help. And they said help. It had the hard P on the end, the one that doesn't come with very many dollar signs, and I decided to help them. And it brought such a great feeling to me to be able to help someone with my gift that couldn't afford it. Sometimes people donate, they give away couches and beds and dressers, and I'm able to take that stuff and go donate it to, single parent homes and kids that are sleeping on floors. And, there's nothing that can make a home feel more like a home than a couch in the living room. And I'm able to send my guys, and we network with churches and other nonprofit organizations to, to help facilitate that. I then took what I knew about my credit. I took what I knew about debt and taxes, and I started an LLC, and I purchased my first home as a business, and I rent from myself. And then I purchased another home and another home, and I did it 8 more times. I now own 8 single family homes in Central Illinois. I did go back and hire the same property management company that denied me. They now answer the phone. They take the calls. They keep a tenant in my properties. They collect the rent. And I don't have to. It's passive income. Passive income was never discussed in my house. All I saw was my mother get up every day and go to work and bust her butt for money, and to barely make ends meet. So passive income was so intriguing to me. Putting money to work for you, it just wasn't something that was learned in my life and in my family. And that's the narrative in a lot of young men and women who are growing up in some of these environments and some of these cycles and some of the traumatic experiences. And I realized that though my father was in prison, we were poor, we were broke, I'm raised by a white woman, there's kids in this world that go through way more than what I went through. There are kids that have to fight and shoot their way to school and home every day. And they have to, I met a young man in federal prison. He took a gun to school, and he didn't take a gun to school because he wanted to be a school shooter. He took a gun to school because he wanted to go to school and he needed protection. He needed to protect himself to be there. For whatever the reason was, he felt safer with it in his book bag than without it. And because he wanted to be there so bad, he went and he took it with him and he was caught. And, you know, he got in trouble. The United States government picked up his case and he was a 19-year-old young man in a United States penitentiary for, you know, possession of an illegal firearm. And to me, it really opened my eyes that the trauma, the untreated trauma, the things that these young men and women are going through is what's leading them to being incarcerated. And the trauma that happens to you once you are incarcerated. You know, there's some pretty crazy things going on inside of these United States penitentiaries and these state prisons. I was a drug addict. I still am a drug addict. I'm in recovery. But when I first went to prison, I wasn't. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be sober. And I found out very quickly that you can get high in prison. Everything that you can get in the street, you can get in prison. And I, you know, was still using. I was still, you know, manipulating people from the outside to send me money, and, you know, it's just still involved in this activity on the inside. There was still trauma. There's still people in there that are getting sexually abused and physically beat up and extorted and, you know, all of these things. And so, you know, going to prison is a traumatic experience. When you come home, you have to heal from that. Trauma is a wound. The word trauma actually comes from the Greek and it means wound. We all know a wound has to heal. If I snap my finger in half right now, if we don't go to the hospital and set it and get treatment for it, we just go drink some water and put some ice on it, we all know that that finger is not going to heal correctly and be useful in my future life. And that's the same thing with trauma as a wound. It has to heal. It's not just going to go away on its own. We have to face it, we have to deal with it, and we have to learn how to live with it to move forward. I share my story in this capacity with you guys. I'm now an author of a book. My book has just moved into publishing. I hope to soon be able to, you know, send everybody out links to be able to go purchase it. The title of the book is Intent to Deliver. It does cover my criminal background. It covers the professional aspect of what I do today, and also as an author and hopefully a motivational speaker. I hope to deliver a message with intent that, you know, we should not wait for anybody else to come and remove these barriers from in front of us. The parole people, the police department, the mental health, the substance abuse, it's not us against them. I always used to think that they were like my nemesis, you know, they were villains, you know, the substance abuse counselors, all they wanted to do was stop me from getting high, you know, and all the police wanted to do was stop me from getting money. And all the prosecutor wanted to do was send me to jail, you know, and I didn't realize that it was my actions. It was the things that I was doing, you know, even though I felt like marijuana wasn't going to get me in a lot of trouble, right? No one's going to overdose on this joint that I sold them. But in all reality, the amounts of marijuana that I sold and I trafficked, they do come with, you know, murders and extortion and rape and, you know, beatings for these drug cartels to get this quantities of drugs across the borders into our country. And the amounts of marijuana that I was selling helped fuel that. And I really had to take a look at that. And I had to understand that there was a bigger picture than, you know, marijuana won't hurt someone. It was hurting someone, and it hurt me and it hurt my family. And so if we don't take anything away from this call today, but the fact that, you know, our integrity and our ability to dream, our ability to imagine, our ability to manifest is all we have. You know, we have to have faith, and we have to put forth the action to validate the amount of faith that we have. And so I hope that there's some people here today that can, you know, just take a little bit of what I've told you. And, you know, there's so much more. You know, there's so many great stories of, you know, FBI raids, and I mean, I could talk another 30 minutes about that flight on Con Air, you know, and some of the things that I went through. They sound like an action movie. It sounds like something with Nicolas Cage. I met real mafia bosses and real in federal prison, you know, the caliber of men that were there. I could have done two things. I could have came home and glorified it, or I could come home and I can share with these other young men about those guys that are on those prison yards that are never coming home. There are young men that are lucky to have the barrier of looking for a job in the real world, because there are some men that all they'll ever do is work in the kitchen in prison. They'll never step outside that gate. They'll never get a second chance. And these men happen to be some of the men that were the most mentally free. Some of those men took me under their wing and they walked around that prison yard with me, and they made me promise that if I went back into this world and I thought once or twice about going back to my old life, that I would think one more time about them on the other side of that gate and how they don't get to come home and they don't get a second chance. And the last thing that I want to do is end up back on the other side of that gate in front of those men and have blown my chance and have to deal with them. And they don't like that. They don't take that very kindly, that you got a second chance and you went out there and you played with it. So believe in yourself, believe in others, love on others. Hopefully, you know, we can keep moving forward as the McLean County Reentry Council has done all of these things this year. It all started with, you know, talking about becoming a nonprofit organization and a 501c3. We knew what it looked like. We knew what it smelled like. We knew what it tasted like. And in the end, we manifested it into a reality. We all took action. We all went our separate ways and did the things that it required to come back together. Support systems are huge. And that's why I commend everybody that's here for us today, is because that's why I joined the McLean County Reentry Council, is I realized I had support. I had my mother, I had family, I had friends, and I never could have done it without them. And it made me want to be that for someone else. And so I commend all of you for being here today and for all of the work that you do put in on the inside of the prisons for those that work there and on the outside. That transition is very important. And so, you know, I do like, you know, for people to ask questions. If there's anything that you guys want to ask me about, I'm definitely open for doing some Q&A. I'm also open for doing some mentorship. I do have some people that have brought some young men to me that have kind of followed down the same path that I have. And I wish I could go back and talk to my 16-year-old self. I wish I had somebody that told me, hey, look, if you walk out that door, go right, because if you go left, somebody's going to knock you upside your head. And so just make sure to go right, because I might have still went left, but at least I knew, at least somebody gave me the information. You either don't know or you don't care. And so when someone can show you the scar on their head and say, hey, listen, this is what's going to happen if you walk out that door and go left, you know, take my word for it, then at least somebody can say they knew. And if they still decide to go do that, then they have to learn it the hard way. I had to learn it the hard way. I saw my father incarcerated, but it didn't teach me the lessons that I needed to learn until I went through it myself. So I thank you guys for listening. I before we get to any Q&A, I don't have any properties open and available right now. I know that's always a question that comes up. All of my properties have tenants in them. That is a blessing. It's a very good thing as an investor. But I do network with other people, investors and realtors, and I am working to try to change that stigma of, you know, people with felonies and, you know, Section 8 and, you know, those types of things. There are people that do business with me every day. How would they not rent to someone because they're a felon, you know? And so I'm just trying to do my best to kind of change those stigmas and the way people look at, you know, people that have come home from prison. So again, I thank you. If anybody has any questions, I'm open.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much, Langston. And yes, does anyone have questions for Langston?
Yes, this is Trudy Robinson from the YW Strive program. Mr. Langston, I would like to know who is or who published your book. My husband was incarcerated for a number of years and he wrote a book. He's having a hard time getting it published. So who are you using for a publisher?
So Trudy, that's a great question. And just like everything else I do in my life, I am self-publishing my book. And
Oh,
so
okay.
if that's something that you want to get with me later and talk about, I can definitely help you you know, explain how I am self-publishing my book. The one thing that I did do is I hired a writer. I did hire a professional writer to help me, and we do Zoom calls and interviews, and he gets all of the information out of me, and then he helps me format it, and then I go in and make small changes, and when I go back and read it, it's as though I told the story. But just like everything else in my life, I felt that this was something that I wanted to do on my own, and I wanted to self-publish, and I want to have control because I want to be able to sell this book. I want to be able to give this book away for free if I want to. I wanted to have full control over my story.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. All right. Thank you. If I'm not mistaken, I think I've got one of your business cards. I'd like to put my husband in contact with you. You know, men, you guys fellowship, you know, you kind of relate differently than women do. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, please, please, my email and my phone number is on that card.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Don't be shy. I know I said a lot. I know there's a lot of stuff in there. You know, I left a lot of stuff out. I just you know, I'm open to, I'm an open book. I have found that, you know, being vulnerable in front of strangers has gone so far for me. And it wasn't until I realized that a lot of things started to change in my life. You know, before I was ashamed of who I was, and now I can speak openly about it. And I know that there's so many other people that have gone through maybe just a fraction of what I've gone through. So if there's any other questions, now's a good time.
Langston, you mentioned, you know, a huge part of your transformation was your faith. And you also talked about the 3 phases of trauma, though, and really understanding untreated trauma. You've mentioned that a lot. You mentioned there's 3 phases of trauma: event, experience, and effect. Can you speak a little bit about in what point in your transformation, you know, was that more of like a lightning bolt moment, learning about untreated trauma? Can that be the key, do you think, for people to break that cycle? It's just that they aren't aware of that. How does that transform your mindset, knowing about the impact of untreated trauma and how to overcome it?
Yeah, I think people are often aware of the trauma that they've been through. I mean, very few of us will go through a traumatic experience and not know it, right? But it's really, you know, when I say like trauma can have a delayed effect, it can be days, it can be months, it can be years before, you know, a traumatic experience can really maybe show its face and really affect your life negatively. You know, adults can go through a traumatic experience and maybe come out on the other end without too much of a negative effect. Those numbers change with children. Obviously, children are still, adolescents are still sculpting how they view the world and how the world views them. And when they experience a traumatic experience at a young age, while their minds are still developing, then those things can have more of a negative effect later on in life. I say communication. I journal a lot. I communicate with my support system a lot. I take inventory every day. Every day I take inventory. I pray in the morning for the strength to keep going, to not use, to stay out of the criminal element, and then I thank God at the end of the day for that strength and for another day through it. And I write down the ways I feel throughout the day when I experience emotions, high emotions, whether it's sadness, whether it's happiness, whether it's fear. I take inventory of that, and I go back at the end of each day and I look at, where was I when I experienced that? What was I doing? Who was I around? If every day I'm irritated, I'm frustrated, I'm mad, I bet you I can find a common denominator in there. There's going to be a person, a place, a thing, something that's always there that's, kind of causing those feelings. So it's one of those things, you'll hear this a lot in NA and AA and substance abuse treatment facilities. People, they get the help and they change when they want to. You can't force them to. Forcing someone to deal with untreated trauma, that can be traumatic in itself. People have to be ready for it. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom. Sometimes it does take, being all the way at the lowest of the low to look up and say, this isn't what I want my life to look like. This isn't what my life was supposed to be. That is unfortunate in those cases. And, I look at it like I would love to help catch as many people as we can before they get to that point. Because I believe that's why I went through it. So that I can help identify some of these things. Lack of self-worth was huge for me. Lack of an identity. I would tell people to find purpose, find a reason for getting up every day and going out into this world, and love it. And that will give you a reason to heal, to get better, to be able to continue doing what you love doing every day.
Great. Thank you.
I have a question for you. You were talking about kind of mentoring. I guess, what does that all encompass? Is it adolescents, or is it even, grown adults that are trying to navigate their way through just coming back and reentry, or even business, as an entrepreneur? I guess, what does that look like, or what have you done?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Really all three. I had a guy come to me. He was in a very similar situation. His background, trying to find an apartment, trying to be in compliance with parole. You can't be homeless, and no one would rent to him. And so, I worked with him. I helped him with his credit score. We helped him put together a resume, just all the things that he needed to really, shop himself to a property management company and giving him an advantage. I believe to truly get in front of recidivism starts with the children. It starts with the adolescents. If we're really ever going to try to beat this thing, it's going to be from the front end, not the back end, helping them before they get there instead of helping them find food and shelter and jobs once they get home. If the youth really understand the consequences behind being a felon, not just that little 2 years that you're going to go do for this crime, you're willing to take that risk when you come from certain places. That 24 months doesn't sound like a lot, but that felony is going to ride with you for the rest of your life. It's going to be decision making and jobs and employment and all of that stuff. So and then also in business and entrepreneurship, I'm not a guru. A lot of things that happened in my life, it was learning as I go. I was was always a risk taker. This time I was taking risk without, you know, the police behind me, without breaking the law. There's a different type of risk to be taken in business ownership and entrepreneurship. But I believe that there are many men in those prisons where I was at that could very well be doing what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. You know, and so it's all three.
And then I guess another question is, do you, I'm guessing you probably do, but do you sometimes talk to groups of individuals who are kind of like returning citizens, you know, like what, you know, what you just said, all of that stuff is very inspiring and amazing. And so I think, you know, is that something you do too, is kind of talk to groups of them?
Yeah, that is absolutely something I want to do more of, that I have done and I want to do more of. You know, I'm only a few years out of prison, and so I think we had a little bit of a barrier getting me back inside the facilities right away. Toy and I were gonna let a little bit of time go by. I think there was just a small period of time we had to wait. And now I should be able to go back into places like Joliet and Pontiac and, you know, Logan and wherever else, you know, Toy wants to take me. But schools, the county jail, I have facilitated some stuff with what is it, drug court, with recovery court. I actually sat down with, you know, the all of the parties involved with drug court, and then the members, I don't know what you call them, members, clients, I don't know, but the attendees, and then I tried to help facilitate some of those barriers. It's not us against them. You guys are all on the same team, and the sooner we realize that, you know, the better off everybody's going to be. And that's been huge. I did speak at the Behavioral Health Forum at the ISU Bone Student Center, and then just a few other, you know, ventures that all kind of happened this last year. And I'm looking forward to 2024 doing a lot more of that.